Well, good morning for another episode of Limbs Lemonade, and welcome to that. And I'm so excited about my next guest host. He is a entrepreneur. He's a life coach, a public speaker, a three-time Olympian, and a silver medalist. And so, please welcome with me, Bill Schuffenhauer. Thanks, Bill, for coming. So excited. He's a friend of mine, and I love your story. And so I think everyone's going to like to hear what you have to say. So
Awesome.
let's back up. I know you let's talk about your life. Tough childhood, turn that into a some good things for the Olympics, and then let's go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe we can do another episode on the childhood, but it is what it is. A lot of people know about that story because I've been talking about that story for 20 plus years worldwide, of a kid who, grew up on the streets, was born to a drug addicted mom who prostituted, literally ate out of garbage cans, 17 different foster homes. So just had that prototypical lifestyle of a kid who was never going to survive or never make it. That probably more than likely would have followed that same path and ended up in the system or prison, or if not even worse, possibly dead. So, it is what it is. And thankfully, through learning lessons and finding the right mentors of coaches and teachers and family members that help guide me along the way, help me get out of that situation and change my stars and find success as an Olympic athlete. So.
Wow. And then you went to the Olympics and three times. That's amazing. Silver medalist. And so then what happens?
That's when you retire and all life is good, right? That's what we were hoping for, but unfortunately that wasn't my story. And when I retired, it honestly started at the 2010 Olympics. I had some serious issues with my son's mom that blew up on the international stage at the 2010 Olympics. And, it was a very unfortunate situation that I had to deal with. Not only I had to deal with it, but because it became an international story, my teammates had to deal with it. My coaches had to deal with it. The fans of the U.S. bobsled team and the fans of the U.S. team and all the sponsors had to deal with it as well. But that literally was the catapult for the next 8.5 years of my life. When you're an Olympian and you plan to retire, your hopes and goals are to retire into that next stage of your life, which takes you to that next level of whatever it may be, right? If you want to go and be just a stay-at-home dad, or you're going to go start your own business, or you're going back to school, whatever it is. But for me, that situation catapulted me down a path that I definitely don't wish upon anyone. Which was first and foremost started off with a lot of depression. My relationships with my family and my kids started going really south. On top of that, bouncing back and forth, from jobs and just not really having a foundation to rely on. And then started getting, really involved with alcoholism and on top of the depression. And then you start taking the antidepressant medications, and then you start taking the pain pills because you're years and years of competing in sports. It is what it is. Your body just hurts all the time. But that's one of those things. It's a perfect cocktail to just continue the chaos in your life. And that was my life to a T, even though I did a really good job of hiding that. I don't even think you knew this back in the day, right? I mean, I didn't. I put on the show that Bill Schuffenhauer, the Olympic silver medalist, life is great. I'm speaking all over the world. I'm coaching, I'm mentoring, I'm helping organizations grow, and I'm doing this and that. But in reality, behind closed doors, I was a complete disaster. And, it eventually, and when I say disaster, people out there who are experiencing depression and suicide and addiction understand exactly what I'm talking about. And the people that don't probably know somebody that's in that situation or has been in that situation. And, it is what it is. And nobody, even my family members had no clue what was going on. But that led through 8.5 years. Yeah.
So who what family members, like your kids, or who no one knew?
No one knew. Not my kids didn't know. My family members didn't know.
Did anybody know? Was
No.
this completely just you? No one did. Wow.
No, because yeah, I did such a good job at just covering it up. When I was at home or by myself, it was chaos. And when I, for me, when I stepped out on stage and I was at a network event, or if I was speaking, or if I was at work, it was literally put on this costume or this mask, right? So nobody had any clue. But that eventually led to what we discussed a little bit earlier, that it just pinnacled to a point where I had enough. And in 2016, I was working with Ballet West at the time, still doing the speaking stuff, still mentoring and coaching and all that stuff. But it eventually led to me attempting suicide in 2016. And when you always hear people say, "Oh, so you attempted," like it was not really, you didn't really make the good effort, but I did. I can, and I can laugh about it now, at the same time being serious. But
Yeah.
my attempt was solid. The specialty doctors that they had to bring in told me that I was lucky. There was no way that, because I had lost so much blood, that most people don't ever survive that. And I remember the night that it happened. I came home from an event, at Ballet West, and I'd been drinking because I was at an event, so that was quote unquote normal. And my girlfriend at the time, who I lived with, she was a little upset because I did get home late, and we got into a tiff, and it was one of those things where I was just like, said, "I am done." It was like, "You must not care about me anymore. Everything's in my life sucks. Everyone hates me. Nothing's going well." Just that typical person that just, again, blamed everything on the world around me for everything that was going wrong. And at that point in time, and hopefully not too graphic, I attempted to take my own life by taking one of our nice, fancy kitchen knives and just whacking my arm, and severed everything in my left arm. Um, and continued just like literally just kind of like bleed out on the kitchen floor in front of my girlfriend. And it is what it is. We can, we go through the whole process of her running to the neighbors trying to get help and trying to save me, and the medical crew getting there, and the whole time I'm fighting them off and telling them I don't want help, but just to let me go, and I was just done. And going to one hospital, and getting to the emergency room, and the on-call doctor, this is like 2 or 3 in the morning, coming out and taking a look. And he's like, "There's absolutely none, we can't do anything from you if we don't get you to the U immediately, or you're not going to make it." And I was still in the mindset, like, I don't care, just let me go. Right. And you have all these other people around you trying to save your life. And so they get me to the U, and of course I get treated there. And is because of the drinking and all the medications that I was taking to numb the pain. It all seems kind of really dreamy. And then I just remember waking up in the hospital the next day and literally like, am I still here? And just literally, I was disappointed
Yeah.
that I was still alive.
Wow.
And so, having to wake up and see my girlfriend in the hospital room and my family sitting in the room, and just the realization of what I did, coming to a reality. And it is what it is. It took, another 2 years of, again, lying to everyone around me outside of the people who really knew what happened. But, I lied to my employers. I lied to my kids. I lied to other family members and friends. I told them that I slept on the ice and cut my hand open or my arm open because I had to have this big cast because of the severity of what I did. They, like I said, they had to bring a specialist in to take tendons and veins out of my leg and put them in my arm and reconnect things. Like it's amazing that I even have, this arm and use of it, and it works now. Complete 100% blessing. And now I realize that I was meant to be here for more of a reason, and more to tell another story in my life, right? But it is what it is. Like 2 years after that, I really continued to struggle and continue the drinking and the self abuse. I guess that's the best way for me to put it, and continue to hide it from everyone. And eventually, I just got to a point where I was just like, nothing is working out. Like everything, again, victim mentality, right? Life sucks. Nothing's working out. No one wants to help me. And, poor Billy. And through the grace of God or whatever, people out there, however you want to believe or don't believe, universal energy. I was connected with a guy who was also a mentor and was starting this. He and I connected on a business deal first and foremost, right? And we were starting to talk about this business deal. And at the end of our conversation, he's like, "Hey, do you want to join my mentoring group? We're doing kind of this beta test, and we'd love to have someone like you, be a part of it because we want to have a sports division." And I've never really had participated in anything like that before. Have never really implemented coaches and or mentors in my life outside of when I was an athlete. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll check it out, see what happens. And, I've, at that point in time, I had absolutely nothing to lose because my life is so chaotic.
Yeah.
And the first conversation we had was talking about, do you lead a life by default or do you lead a life by design? And that really, really resonated with me on a whole nother level, because I looked at my life and I was like, my life is 100% by default right now.
Wow.
And it's not to put a blame on anyone else. It's just saying that my life is nothing is the way I envisioned it last year, 5 years ago, 10 years, 20 years ago. And, as we got in more into that conversation, the next part of that conversation is, well, if you lead a life by default, it's never too late to deconstruct your architecture that you've built and go back to the game plan board, if you will, and reconstruct your architecture by design. And I was just like, is that really possible? Like, for me to do that? Like, is it really that simple?
Yeah.
And we started getting more into conversations about doing mirror work. So if anybody out there is not familiar but with mirror work, but it's literally you looking into the mirror and having a conversation with yourself, but you're literally, before you have that conversation, you're staring into the mirror until you truly see another person, not just your reflection. You see another person. And the first time I did that, after one of those conversations, I literally just started crying, because for the first time at the time of my 40, how old am I now? I don't know, 47 or whatever. But at the time, first time in my 45 years, I saw myself for the first time. And I pursued in literally having a full blown conversation with this person in the mirror. And, the conversation was basically like, listen, no one's going to come save you. You can say all the prayers that you want to say. You can, do whatever it is that you want to do. But, the universe, God, your family, your friends, no one's going to save you. The only person who can save you is you. And it's going to start off right now by you taking full accountability for everything that you've created in your life. And with that, starting to implement deconstructing those negative things that you've created in your life. Now, me a little bit better than a lot of people too. I'm big into making big, powerful decisions and just going and executing right away. And so I did. I literally started decluttering things in my life, the things that didn't serve me as a human being, things that didn't serve me in the goals and dreams that I wanted to achieve. But I went to extreme. I literally closed down a successful company that I had up in Ogden that was doing really well. Didn't even bother selling it. Just literally shut it down because it didn't serve me. I sold everything in my house that I had, decluttered everything almost to 100%. And then with that, I started implementing, surrounding myself with more positive people and being vulnerable enough to ask for help. That's a huge key, because it is what it is, right? I'm this big 6 foot 260-pound Olympic athlete that technically I'm not supposed to be vulnerable, and I'm not supposed to get down on myself, and I'm not supposed to be emotional. But those things and those actions were the same things that were holding me down. And so I decided to be vulnerable and ask for help, surround myself with positive people. You and I both know Dan Clark. He's always talked about, you become the sum of the 7 people you hang around the most. So I was like, all right, I've got a beautiful network of amazing people in my life. And all I got to do is reach out to them and ask for help. And so I started that process, and things were really progressing really well. I moved from Ogden back to Salt Lake. And interesting enough, I still wasn't talking about the suicide attempt, because I wasn't ready for everyone to know that Bill Schuffenhauer, the successful Olympian, dealt with depression, suicide, and addiction.
Yeah.
And it was only through a conversation with another gentleman that we know. We were talking about doing a business deal together again. All these business deals going down.
Yeah.
And we kind of got on this conversation about, my issues with depression. And he was an athlete as well, so he understood. And he's like, hey, I'm putting on this really big event at my house in a couple of weeks. It's kind of a masquerade party, but it's more about talking about how we put on this mask to the general public, that's not showing who we really, really are. And your story would be a perfect fit if you were, you're a survivor of suicide. Like, that's very rare to come across something like that.
And what year was this? When did this take place roughly? Do you remember?
This is literally just over a year ago.
Oh.
And when he brought it up, I was like, Dave, no way. I don't want to talk about this. And I said, I don't want, I'm not willing to be vulnerable enough and throw that part of my life out there. I was like, I just want to keep it, under wraps. And he's like, all right, cool. He's like, I'd love to have you come to the event anyways. And so I went home, and for whatever reason, I've always prayed my whole life.
Yeah.
So I just went home and prayed about it before I went to sleep, and woke up the next morning. And whether you want to say it's our Heavenly Father or the universe, it just, something was screaming at me that you have to go tell your story. And that conversation was, as much as you've impacted people around the world with your story of being this homeless kid to the Olympics, your story of dealing with depression, suicide, and addiction is so much even more relevant to people than that story. And you're going to help change so many people's life by talking about your situation. And so I went back to Dave and Dave Austin, and I said, Dave, I thought about it, and if the invitation's still open, I'd love to be one of the speakers at your event. And I'll tell you what, man, I have never been so nervous and scared in my entire life than when I agreed to do that. And when it came down to the actual event at Dave's house, I'm just nervous as possibly could be, because I know my time's coming up, right? Which is weird, because I've been doing speaking for over 20 years, and in front of the biggest stages in the world. And this is in front of a very intimate group of people, a lot of very influential people here in Utah. But I was just like so nervous, because I was literally going to peel off these layers and expose who Bill Schuffenhauer really was, and the life that I've led for the last 8.5 years. And so I didn't prepare anything. Again, something was just telling me, just get up there and let your heart speak. And I still get emotional about it even right now, taking myself back, because it was a very monumental moment for myself, and understanding that the impact that it could have not only on my own mental health, but hoping that it would have a positive impact on the people that were there. And so I get up, and what I felt like was mumbling for 10 minutes. I guess I did get the point across, but I was overwhelmed, honestly, and in tears, and everyone there I could see was in tears. And I after I got done speaking, I walked outside in the back of the house just by myself, and just wondering, like, gosh, did I do the right thing? Did I just ruin my opportunity to continue to be a mentor and speak, on stages worldwide? And, are people going to judge me now because of I was vulnerable and I talked about my feelings and all that stuff? And you know what, to my surprise, literally one person after another, and we're talking a handful of people, 100 plus people came outside, and the conversations were all exactly the same. They're like, hey, we're so thankful that you were vulnerable enough to tell your story, because I have a story just like yours, but I've never felt like it was okay to talk about it. But if you, Bill Schuffenhauer, the Olympian, can talk about it, then it's okay for me to talk about mine. And we're just super thankful. And I was just like in shock and almost disbelief, because it was so opposite of the reaction that I thought I was going to get, but it was definitely the reaction I could have dreamed of having. And and then from that point on, it is what it is. Again, universe or Heavenly Father continues to bring people into my life, and opportunities to talk more about it. I've had an opportunity to talk to people, literally, you know, random people have called me up on my phone and said, "Hey, I got your number from Facebook and I'm really struggling. And could you help talk me off the ledge?" Um, and I just, I do what I do, and I take time out for them. Doesn't matter who they are, and just try and talk to them about it, and see what I can do to help them out.
I've had chills this whole time. I mean, honestly, Bill, this has been amazing. I'm so excited that you've been able to be willing to come and talk about this, because I know that there's going to be people that will watch this thing that's going to change their life. And I think in this time, we've gone through this horrible, I mean, a lot of it's a horrible year for COVID. And I mean, the suicides are off the roof. I mean, and
Yeah,
so I think people are, they're trying to figure out, they're trying to adjust, and they don't know how to cope. Right.
yeah,
And I feel like what you're doing right now is you're giving people hope.
yeah. I mean,
I feel, I think, I mean, that's what I'm feeling right now. I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, so many people are struggling, and this is an incredible message to be able to say, hey, it's okay. It's okay not being
yeah,
okay. Number
yeah,
one, right?
absolutely.
And
No, and
that there's things you can do to deal with it.
yeah, and I think it plays right into what we're talking about right here. How do you turn literal lemons into lemonade?
Yes.
And without thinking about it back then, I've found a way to try and turn those lemons into to hopefully lemonade for, again, not only my own continued mental health, but other people's mental health. Whoever I have an opportunity to share my story with.
Yeah.
And people have always looked at me and like, "Oh my gosh, Bill Schiffenhauer, like the 3-time Olympian, and you're like bigger than life," right? And there might be some truth to that, but at the same time, I'm still a human being, and I'm no different than you or anybody else I get to work with, right? I still deal with issues and craziness sometimes in my life, and hurdles in my life, and it's all about learning how to cope and deal with them, and learning how to adapt. And most of all, we talked about it a little bit, and obviously, I don't want to take away from your thunder, but I think the key for me was realizing that being vulnerable was okay, because we, especially as men, right, we're not taught to be vulnerable. Like, hell,
Yeah.
don't, men don't cry. And you grow up, and some people hear it too, like when I was growing up with my dad, like, you're supposed to be a man and be tough. And yeah, that's totally fine and dandy, but when life is handing you lemons, it's okay to be vulnerable and figure out a way to turn those lemons into lemonade.
That's right. That's right. No, I agree 100%. I think vulnerability is such a huge part that we maybe as men don't always grasp, right? And
Yeah,
in that somehow we think that vulnerability it makes us less manly.
yeah,
And the reality is, in my opinion, I think it makes us more manly. It makes us
yeah,
more whole, right?
yeah,
Certainly more mentally healthy. There's no doubt about
yeah,
it, right? I think that's what you're trying to say.
yeah.
And I think that's so. I mean, if you had to sit there and look at this, what were the true, sometimes the lemonades that came from these lemons for you? Who were they?
What some of the lemonades I think that came from the lemons, again, was just, I think, first and foremost, helping me be okay with talking about my story.
Yeah.
um you know it's it is one of those things that just every time I talk about it, I get a little bit more comfortable talking about it, because it is what it is. I do still struggle, and that's part of the message I want to get out there to everyone out there, is like, I still struggle as a human being sometimes, and it's like you said, it's okay to not be okay all the time. But I've realized that I have such an amazing tribe of people around me, even like you and I. Like, I know you and I don't talk all the time, But I know if I called you up and I was like, bro, I just need someone to talk to, I know that you would drop what you're doing and talk to me,
Yeah.
and vice versa. And so understanding that, like, my tribe is true, and I think for other people their tribe is true. And we sometimes, well, we don't have to go through this journey on our own,
Yeah.
especially when that journey is a rough road. That's the best time for us to reach out to our tribe. And if we don't have that tribe we feel comfortable with, reach out to me.
Right.
I understand what it's like, and I've literally had several people call me sometimes that in reality was probably the most inconvenient time for me, but I knew what they were going through, so I took that time out for them, that helped them, either calm down or refocus and get some clarity, and help them just redirect their energy. But in turn, you know as well as I do, when you come from a place of service, it just comes back to you tenfold, and
Yeah.
without that expectation. And so, I still completely remember like what it feels like to be in that dark place and feel hopeless and worthless, and like no one cared, and why isn't anyone going to come to my rescue? And so if my story can help other people out there that are feeling like that, I'm more than willing to be an open book and share that with them, and talk to them about what I did, and what can they possibly do to help get over that hump, or those issues in their life.
Wow. So we've talked about some lemonades. Are there still some lemons now that you're seriously dealing with? Are there still some lemons that are you're facing?
Yeah. No, that's another thing I think we should, also be really clear on, is that we all still have lemons in our life that we deal with, especially right now with this pandemic, as you said, right? The suicide rate's gone up, the alcohol consumption's gone up, addiction's gone up, and not just a little bit, it's gone up significantly. And for me, again, my whole life has been about turning lemons into lemonades, or for other people whom that might not make sense, turning negative situations into positives. And so I face challenges every single day, just like a normal person does. It might be financial, it might be family, it might be work, it might be my relationship. But I've taken this time, because I guess the way my mind processes things is like, we are in the worst pandemic we've ever been in, right? And we're all in the same boat. So why don't I take this opportunity to try and figure out how to turn every single day of my life into a positive? And does it work every single day? No, not at all. And there are some days where I go a week or 2 weeks where I'm just like, it is a straight up struggle. But then there's those days or those weeks or those months where it's awesome and things are going really, really well, right? And so, I just encourage people out there, again, we are all in the same boat, and we don't have to do this alone. And we all deal with lemons on a daily basis. And the cool thing is, what, Michael, you may have gone through something that people out there are dealing with. So why not call Michael? Or I may have, same thing. I might be going through something, or I might know somebody who's going through something that I'm dealing with for the first time. So reach out to them. And, again, especially guys, right? We're more susceptible to having this egotistical attitude towards life, and like, hey, I'm not going to talk about my feelings. You know what? Where does that get us? Doesn't get us anywhere. It just continues to create more chaos in our life and create more problems. So, just encouraging people, like, if you're dealing with lemons, you know what? The guy next to you or the girl next to you has lemons too, and they may have figured out how to turn their lemons into lemonade and the stuff that you're dealing with. So just reach out and ask.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think, and I love what you talk about with Dan Clarkson, about the get connected with people that you become that some sort of those people. So make sure you connect with the right people, right? Who
Yeah, right.
lift you, raise you, and be the best you can be. Um, so if you were to have one thing that somebody's going through the same thing, the alcohol, the depression, suicide, all that, what would be the one thing that you'd want to share with them right now that you think would make a difference?
Don't do it on your own. Don't do it on your own. Bottom line. I'm the guy. I am that prototypical guy that was like, hey, I'm this big giant Olympian and I'm tough and I'm cool and blah blah blah, and I can figure everything out on my own, right? And you know what? We don't have to do it on our own. We have so many amazing people around us, and it doesn't even have to be somebody we know. You know, I guarantee you, I could literally probably walk downtown and walk up to some random stranger and be like, hey, you know what? Do you have a minute? I'm struggling. Not that, we typically are going to do this, but the point is just saying we have so many people around us. And the reality is, as human beings, our foundation is to come from a place of service and help our fellow human being. And, not everybody's going to do it, but there's plenty of people out there that are willing to do it. And again, my words of advice, if you will, is just don't go about it on your own. Be willing to be vulnerable in your situation, because that is the quickest way for you to get out of the situation you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And I want to thank so much, Bill, for being willing to be vulnerable here.
Yeah.
To take time. This has been amazing. I really, it's just been incredible experience. And so I look forward to more conversations in the future. Maybe for those who didn't get to hear your earlier story, I think they'd like to hear some of that too. But
Yeah.
I think this is real important. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. I really appreciate it.